is not legal advice. Whatever you do with your business is your decision. We can only talk about our own experiences. So, Alex, maybe if you could start kind of sharing a bit about yourself and your story and how you kind of got to the point you are today.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Alex Trutko. I run Blue Atlas Bakehouse. I currently also work at Selu Bakery, which is a bakery in DC, a bakery and mill in DC. I wanted to get a little more experience with that side of the business, so I decided when the opportunity presented itself to start working there. But prior to that, for about 2 years, I was running Blue Atlas out of my house in Arlington, Virginia, and selling out of farmers markets. I'd actually, when I had started talking to Jonathan, the owner of Selu, about working there, I had started talking to another individual about selling through their store. I don't know if you guys have understood, that's a whole different set of rules and regulations that I was going to go through. I started working myself towards jumping through those hoops, and then I was given an opportunity to onboard at Selu for a little while to get more experience in milling, working with a baking team, because I previously only worked by myself as a baker. And then as a general background, I also, I've had a billion jobs. But my food obsession was always, growing up, summer jobs always in kitchens of restaurants, cook, not as a baker. One day actually I was working in a place that made their own like flatbreads. It was a Lebanese spot, and the woman who usually made the flight didn't show up to work, and they're like, "You could do that, right? You could, right?" And I was like, Sure. I had no idea what I was doing, but I'd seen her do it a bunch, and I struggled through it and realized I liked working with the dough and sort of that magic of you got flour, you got water, mix it all together, and then you end up with this beautiful creation at the end that I loved eating previously, but I had really very little experience working with, and I kind of just was enchanted by it and started kind of working more with making bread at home. I think my wife got really sick of how much bread I was making during the pandemic, as a lot of other people, I'm sure, went down that rabbit hole with all the time you had on your hands at home, and suggested that maybe a farmer's market would be a good way to offload some of that. And I happened to meet someone from Fresh Farms. A friend of mine was dating Angela, and they came over one day, and I just rambling on about bread, and she said, "Oh, well, I work at a farmer's market," and I was like, "Oh, well, maybe I can make something happen here." And then it kind of just went from there.
Yeah. Hey, my name's Joey. I run a sandwich pop-up called Bread Handed. We primarily sell at the Fresh Farm markets, and basically, the kind of the difference between Alex and I is I'm relatively new to this space, into this sort of concept of cottage bakeries, and this summer has been our first season doing it, so that's kind of the difference in perspectives that we bring here. But yeah, more or less, I've always been a foodie, always been into baking. I'd say like the pandemic definitely like multiplied my interest and I guess like time spent working with doughs and working with bread and all that good stuff. And I think just this past winter, my business partner and I just kind of decided that we were gonna just kind of take a crack at it, and the farmers markets have treated us very well so far. And yeah, I'm happy to share any insights that I might have.
And that's a good segue, I think, into another question around, at what point did you say, hey, this passion is something I want to turn into a business? And was there a light bulb moment? Or did it happen over time? What was that like for you?
Yeah, so I had gotten into this routine sort of out of, so my girlfriend is vegetarian, just as a side little caveat. And I was kind of experimenting with, for about a year I was trying to make like sandwiches completely from scratch, everything bread, vegetables, sauces that were like vegetarian and kind of like replicated some sort of like popular sandwich like chicken parm but like vegetarian, or like a Reuben but like vegetarian. Just kind of like a game I was sort of playing with myself. And so, yeah, I was sort of into that scene, and that was kind of like my routine and my hobby. But then me and my friend Ben happened to be out to lunch one day, and we sort of realized there wasn't like a killer like sandwich shop in DC that we like would if someone asked like where's the best sandwich in DC, like we didn't have one that like came to mind, and that I'd say that was kind of like the light bulb moment of like maybe it's something we try, because he's a great cook, and I sort of had the sort of like baking expertise, and that's really when the wheels got put in motion. I'd say one thing led to another, and that's where we're here today. So.
I mean, it's probably because friends and family said stop giving me bread when I was testing all these different recipes during the pandemic. But I think I've always loved working with food, but other than jobs working for someone else in the kitchen, I'd never worked with food as a profession. So I wanted to maybe step out and do something on my own, and I felt confident that other people wanted to eat the bread that I was making. So then it was trying to figure out how to then get it into people's mouths that weren't just acquaintances. So and I had a little bit of time with a lot less busy social life, and so I just started kind of working through what would it actually take for me to sell the bread. So I think I just really it started with a passion for making it, just loving food and being kind of obsessed with it, and then from there it was, can I do something with that? Can I make it into a business where maybe I can start working towards supporting myself and my family?
Great. So, for me, when I was starting the bagel business in Baltimore, I was, reading things on the Maryland website about the Department of Health website and, Department of Ag about all those things I may or may not have to comply with. What was that process like for you both in terms of what was the first step? How did you kind of set up your business?
Yeah, it was kind of scary for me at first because I'm not well, I follow rules, but I'm not super concerned with that sort of thing. But I was concerned that eventually I would run into some problems with some sort of regulator. So I think I found a 2-page PDF on some Virginia Department of Agriculture website about cottage law that was about 10 years old. And that was about what I found. That was one of the reasons I kind of wanted to talk about this today, because I felt completely uninformed. I called around to ask people, and everyone say, I don't know what you're talking about. You can call this person, call that person. Finally found someone at the Virginia Department of Ag that knew what I was talking about, but basically said, well, you just go with whatever that PDF says.
Do you have to register? Did you have to
yeah, so I was going through this the other day, so I had this piece of paper and kind of working through some of the things I had to do. So I think the food part, you focus on so much that I want to make good bread. I want to present a product that's great. And then you start thinking about the business side of things, and you're like, what the hell am I doing? And I luckily had a friend who's an accountant, and he knew something about helping new businesses in Virginia set up. And he pointed me towards some things that he knew I had to do, but not knowing much about the actual food side of things. He didn't know anything about what the sort of regulations and what I couldn't do, how I had to present products. So yeah, I think it was first just like trying to figure out what hoops I had to jump through to be a legal business, and then what kind of food safety regulations there were to make sure that what I was doing was not only going to be safe for people, which I was pretty sure was already the case because I wasn't getting myself and my family sick, but something that if there was some sort of inspector that was concerned with it, that I was following the various rules. I mean, so yeah, I had to register as a business. I registered as a sole proprietor, partially because it was much simpler, not because it was necessarily the best business move. It's because I was already so overwhelmed with everything that I just went with what was the easiest, because that rolls your taxes all into your personal tax, all that stuff. So you're not creating a whole new LLC, something like that, which would probably be a better idea from a liability perspective. And then creating like a DBA filing, like doing business as, so the name Panelists Bakehouse I'd associate with myself. And then I'm just looking at all this here because I was like, couldn't believe all the things, and when I was looking through all these files I had to do. And then business tax registration, sales tax registration, and then gain liability insurance in case something does happen at a market. Some markets, Fresh Farm requires it, and generally speaking, I would suggest it just in case something does go wrong and you need some sort of protection. But then ongoing, it was, paying for that insurance, filing sales tax reports. I remember when I was first trying to do that, I was like, I know I have to pay taxes, right, somewhere, but I could not find anyone that was telling me what and how. And then I don't think I would have come across what in Virginia call the sales tax 9 form, where you're reporting sales tax as a sole proprietor, unless my friend had been able to point me towards it, honestly. So I felt incredibly lost at first and concerned that I was missing something. And I think that's, like I said, one of the main reasons I want to talk about this, because it was not straightforward and it was a little bit anxiety inducing. And I think for some people who are especially concerned about stepping over those boundaries, it might put them off from even doing it once they start looking into it, because they say this is too much and I don't know what's acceptable. Yeah.
What's it, DC?
Well, yeah, I mean, we do. I guess what I would say is an interesting choice that we made was we sort of like, I don't want to say put the cart before the horse, but we definitely decided we were going to do this, set up kind of like some of the more basic business infrastructure, bank account, business license, this, that, and the other. And then we sort of like sent our application to Fresh Farm and we were accepted, and then we knew what the first market was going to be, and we really had to like work backwards from there. So yeah, I mean, it was like Alex said, it's a lot to know, like, and there's a lot that you don't know, and Fresh Farm has a lot of really helpful guidelines, and people were able to answer our questions, and not to like just shamelessly plug a different like entity altogether, but LegalZoom had some pretty helpful insights as far as licensing guides and not only just on the setting up an LLC sort of side of things, but also you put in the information about like what your business is, what you're doing, and they kind of say, all right, well, you need XYZ license and permit, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, and then we also have we have several added levels of complication, considering we do operate in the Arlington market, so we're sort of we have to comply by both DC and Virginia laws in that sense, and then we also have we prepare food at the markets, and we cook, and so another additional set of rules and regulations that we have to abide by. So yeah, I mean, I guess long story short, we sort of we put a deadline on ourselves of like the first market, and then we sort of had to work backwards from there, and then occasionally be like something would pop up like, oh, you need this temporary food vendor, mobile food vendor from Arlington County. It's like, all right, well, time to call the Arlington County Department of Health and figure out what that means. And yeah, so I don't know if that's necessarily the approach I would recommend, but it definitely gave us the goals to hit and the timeline to do so, for sure.
Yeah.
Could I just ask a follow-up,
Yeah.
Joey? When you're saying we were told, is that when you went to a particular farmer's market to get access to the farmer's market, they said, here are the things you need?
I think so. We still really only operate out of this one, like Arlington Courthouse Farmers Market, but it was the case that it's like, someone from Fresh Farm definitely said, hey, we're missing this paperwork. Like, can you obtain it by this date? And then we would just go about doing that.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
I got pretty comfortable with asking what felt like stupid questions,
Sure.
Because you don't know what you don't know. So it might seem obvious to someone, but there was a lot of confusion on my end as to what was. Am I missing something entirely that I don't even know I'm missing? I probably still am, but definitely was an adventure.
I mean, my story of that is like, so my business back out Bagel, like, I set up a business. I didn't mean to set up a business. I was like, I had lived in Chicago and made bagels and started making them for my neighbors, and then one of my neighbors happened to be our state legislator, and she posted about the bagels, and next thing you know, I was getting all these emails from people in our neighborhood asking where they could get bagels. So it was like, I had to figure it out really fast. And the thing I always struggled with was like, you know, obviously most cottage food laws don't let you do cheeses and things like that. It's really weird to sell bagels without cream cheese. And I ended up having to, like, you know, figure out if there was ways to skirt the law, if there's ways to partner. I ended up like partnering with a creamery where they supplied the cream cheese on paper, right? Like in a lot of ways, like they were still working, like probably with pseudo-legal. This is why I'm saying no legal advice. But you know, it's really when you're trying to set up a business and trying to think about like what will make that business function for customers. Sometimes like the cottage food laws and like are great on a safety level, but as you start to scale, they get really hard to like allow your business to scale. They can be like, until this past year, for example, in Maryland, there was a limit on how much revenue you could generate as a cottage food business, and it was like $20,000, I think, $25,000. I forget what the number was. They've now since raised it, which was in part from some of the members of CGA advocating and other folks advocating. But you know, that can be a big barrier if trying to scale a business. What sort of barriers have you guys faced as you've been growing or scaling? And
To note on that, in Virginia, I know that there's no limit on baked goods, but there are limits on certain cottage foods that you can produce. Like there's limits on amounts of sales from honey and from like canned goods, I believe, but not from baked goods. Yeah, I mean, some of the issues, I mean, outside of the paperwork, it's figuring out where to source materials, grains, even something as simple as paper bags. You know, you have to find a place that you can sustainably purchase from and be able to then and to feel good about, you know, the grains especially. I mean, paper bags, I'm not sure, I don't have an artisanal paper bag source, but I you know, the grains I was trying to source as locally as possible, and CGA was a great resource that I stumbled on eventually to do so, which I think maybe even Angela said, hey, I know about these guys, check them out. Because at first I think, and then equipment. I mean, the way I started was so silly. I realized that I was using like a home oven. My bakes were taking like forever because it's so small, it's so slow, it's not meant for it. I ended up not being able, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna get something like a Rofco or something, or a home stone sold oven, to realize that me and every other person in the world was trying to get one during the pandemic, so it was not gonna happen in any short order. So I put an order in for an American-made knockoff, basically, a Nero, which is basically the same thing as a Rofco home stone sold oven, but that was gonna take 7 months. So what I did was go to Home Depot and find the cheapest home oven I could find, and my house had 2 ovens in it, like home ovens, so I could double my capacity that way. So equipment was an issue, so that capacity, learning how to scale up production so I was more efficient in the way that I worked, so I wasn't spending extra hours because I wasn't overlapping that mixes and things like that, because I wasn't used to making so much at once. And then, you know, there's all the things that I didn't think of at first, like having all of the printed materials from market, having a sign, things like that, you know, kind of, I was so focused on making bread that I was not focused on all the things you need to facilitate making it and marketing it. Yeah, I mean, I think access to a market was difficult first, and if you don't have like a farmer's market, I was kind of in the same position where I had stuff kind of going, but I hadn't jumped all in because I was like, well, okay, but I still have nowhere to sell this. And then I met Angela from Fresh Farm, and she said, oh, well, we need someone at this market. Can you do it? And I was like, when? And she's like, next week. And I was like, sure. And then jumping through, like, going to get like a sign and like borrowing an easy up from a neighbor that plays volleyball and getting folding tables, all those things. Everything's a barrier, I guess, at first, but it's also an opportunity to push yourself. So I think a lot of it happened once I was in a position where I knew I had to put something up for market. So I was like, okay, you better make this work. But yeah.
I'm curious what your method was for baking in the home ovens.
Oh, not great. It was like cast irons full of lava rocks in the bottom shelf with a bunch of boiling water, and then like consistent, like having to refill those like once in the middle of baking. I had bought basically like you can buy baking tiles like stone, but like there were smaller ones so I could get my whole oven deck into like a baking stone, and that's having 2 ovens running and then doing it like 7 times in a row, so all day. Nightmare.
I was batches of 32 bagels. If I tried to do more, it slowed my oven down too much. And I broke the door of my oven six times, I think, roughly, where I was just opening the door too much that the handle was like plastic and constantly breaking on me. So what about you, Joe?
I mean, yeah, definitely, the long and short of it, just to echo and agree with what y'all are saying, is that your kitchen was not designed to have a commercial baking operation run out of it. Whether it be the oven is not meant for that. You don't have infinite counter space. You don't have infinite storage of, it's just there's so many limiting factors when it comes to a home kitchen, and you have to be extremely creative with your like time management. So it's like, all right, this dough is gonna rise for X number of hours. That's like, then you have that time to work on something else, and just like I'm very litigious about like really scheduling out the days that we're prepping for a market. It's like I have to make X amount of bread, and I have to make 120 sandwich rolls. Like that's 5-6 batches, 30 minutes each. Like it's just, you have to do this math and really like script out. It's almost like I feel like I'm writing myself a script of like, when this is happening, you're gonna move from this part of your kitchen over here to work on prepping something else, and it's very highly choreographed. For me, that's the only way I can make it work with what I have, and that's kind of the whole thing of like cottage baking is like you have what you have, and you have to like kind of make it work. And then just an additional sort of barrier, I guess, to entry is just going back to these legal concerns and stuff. Like all of these applications and all of these permits and stuff, not a single one of them is free to obtain. So it's just something to consider, like and especially when you're starting up, there's a lot of like fees associated with this, and it does put you in an early hole, in addition to like buying the tables, equipment, the Blackstones to cook on, the tents, the signage. So it's all stuff that like in isolation, it's $100 here, $100 there. It adds up fast. And then like our first summer, I think we were just kind of focused on like netting that out to basically zero, and then kind of going from there. So yeah, some of the barriers.
It took me a while to make money on it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I never scaled up enough to make astounding amounts of like send your kid to college money. But I think it's very smart being organized and scheduling stuff out. Don't be like me and just like work your way into it by feel, because you're gonna waste a lot of time. Organization is really important. Eventually I got on the spreadsheet bandwagon, and that made a big difference. And I think the biggest piece, I would say like the biggest hindrance to production was my oven situation. once I was able to get the stone sold 3-level oven, I was able to make better bread, and I was able to make bread much faster. So I think like if I had to say, I gotta kind of limp along with whatever equipment I have. It's not ideal, but I can make dough by hand. The oven was the most important thing I purchased by far.
So this was the extra oven.
No, getting rid of that was a godsend. Yes, it was the extra oven, but it was the third oven. I got rid of that second $400 Home Depot oven as fast as I humanly possibly could for the stone sold bread oven. It's a bread oven. It's about the size of your dishwasher. It's not huge, but it's a 3-level Nero bread oven that allows you to cook, 15 kilo and a half loaves at a time, and the quality is so much higher. But that was the thing, was the oven capacity was really keeping me down for a while there, and making everything much, much longer for process. That was my big.
And I just want to pause. Any questions?
I was just wondering about, have any of you used a shared use commercial space? So if you have, when did you decide to start using it?
I have not.
I looked. I have not. I looked and I couldn't find one that was particularly focused on bread production. They had more equipment, more space, and cold storage, all that great stuff. But the baking situation wasn't going to substantially improve because it seemed like most of them were focused on catering businesses that were getting ready, that were using conventional ovens more frequently. So I wasn't able to find one that had a bread, oven, something that was meant for that.
And not to overly supply legal advice, but I do think there is in the DC cottage food laws, it is sort of stipulated that you don't use a commercial kitchen.
Very interesting.
I think in Virginia you probably could, but
You can.
Yes, you could.
you can, yeah. But I don't. I guess I looked at it just to see, and I didn't find anything that really fit the bread focus.
Yeah, in Baltimore, I looked at it as well. For me, it was more. One of the commercial kitchens that's really popular in Baltimore already had a bagel maker in there, so I didn't want to compete with them and do all that. But the other aspect was just the lifestyle of was that going to fit my schedule and my timing, and having to go back and forth in between rises and things like that. It was kind of for me, it was, I had another job, I had family. It was am I fully trying to grow this cottage business to the point that it is my full-time business, or do I want to keep it as a cottage business? Is it kind of the level? And for me, I am Motzi, Brussels here, they had offered the days they're closed, I could use their kitchen if I wanted. I never did it because all my customers were right by my house. They were 20 minutes away. I could have gone and baked and then brought everything. But then it's I'm moving bus tubs around, and there's kind of the optimization too of when you're running a cottage business, the rest of your life too, because it is generally. But I'd be curious, I know, Abby, I think you said you are in a commercial kitchen now, right?
Yeah, I did a couple of years at home. The first year I was just pick up and delivery, and then I started at a farmer's market. It runs about 7 months of the year. And it just got to be, I live in a small old house, and it was okay, well, if I put these 2 chairs together and put a board on them, then that's a table there. And, clearing everything out before I started, it was too much. So I started renting space, and on the one hand, it's a great bridge between working out of your home and committing to your own space and that kind of investment. On the other hand, it's really expensive. Last year, what year is it? In 2022 season, I did one market and kind of a handful of others now and then. And at the end of the year, or at tax time, I was doing my taxes, and I was this is really depressing. I'm going to get a lot of money back because I didn't make any money this year. So this year I do 4 markets and I do some wholesale and and it's a lot, but it's all to kind of keep up with the cost of using this kitchen, because typically you're paying like by the hour. Sometimes there's also a membership fee. You pay for storage, and yeah, you just have to like commit to like, it can't really be at least for what I'm doing, it can't be a side hustle. Like this is my full-time job. And you're also working with what they have to offer you. Like I feel fortunate that when I signed on to go there, he agreed to like buy me a proofing cabinet. But then when I wanted a sheeter, like I had to buy that, and I feel fortunate that he's not charging me for the space to store it because it's not small. So they're just, it's good and it's bad and it's great and it's awful.
Ovens. That's great.
It's great to have more oven space. This kitchen is set up more for like catering and commissary, and so not being able to control the environment is another factor. Like I'm laminating dough in like a 75, 80 degree space. It's a workout. Like you're rushing, and it kind of dictates like my batch sizes because I need to be able to work really fast. But there are a couple, where are you?
Charlottesville.
And I'm not familiar with ones down there, but I know like in the Leesburg area there are a couple good ones that also act as like an incubator too.
I've done research on like all of the ones in the Philadelphia surrounding region, and it's really hard to find it with baking equipment. Or at least like the one that I'm at has 2 catering kitchens and 2 bakery kitchens, and then they actually had a pizza oven that I was baking out of. They're the only one in the region that has that. Everyone really just has normal convection ovens. And then they took it away because they said, no one's using it. They got a grant to upgrade their equipment. Didn't ask any of their members if that would affect their business. So it is hard to find, and I feel kind of the same way. Like there's pros and cons. Like it was good to get started. I have the fridge space that I need, but it's really not a long-term solution.
I don't know if we're getting into scaling kind of conversation
Let's
or
do it.
later. I mean, it seems like kind of perfect segue into that. Yeah, I mean, I also help run another family business. The baking thing for me was always a passion that I really wanted to indulge in. So part of doing the cottage industry stuff was a way to kind of satisfy that in a realistic way. I mean, it's difficult to fit everything into your life that you want to fit in your life. I've got a kid, I've got this other family business that takes at least a full-time job time out of me each week, and then working at Sailor right now has replaced what I was doing from the home cottage industry business. But I always kind of envisioned having a more traditional bakery, but after working for a while, doing it myself, and then trying to transition away from the family business, which is like, that's a whole nother problem and stuff you're dealing with, not just work but also family. But I looked at scaling up and kind of making that move to that next step, and it was scary to say the least. I mean, you're leaving behind maybe a job that provides a relatively stable income for you and your family, and you're not only doing that, but you're taking a lot of money to invest into. I mean, that Stonehill oven, that was $3,500. That 30-liter spiral mixer's like nearly $1,000, and that's nothing. That seems like something, and it is when you're kind of starting from like I haven't made any money on this business point, but that's nothing compared to opening a real brick and mortar. So I'm still interested in exploring that, but the more I've worked at Seilu, getting kind of a feel for that, the more that I kind of try to expand my production at home, the more I wondered whether or not I wanted to kind of keep it small, because it is, I like doing what I do, but I don't like working so much that I want it to be my whole life. So I think when you look at Seilu, for instance, Jonathan, who runs it, is constantly burning the candle both ends. Seems he's got another kid coming, and it's just like it's a lot to manage a spot, a lot to have people relying on you for their livelihood. You're relying on for yours. Margins are razor thin, and the work is physically punishing. I thought that maybe the scaling was just a natural step, but now I kind of wonder whether or not it is, because finding this space and the time, energy, money is daunting.
I have the same, experience of like a few people ask me if I want to go like check out like a bakery spot where someone had just moved out or things like that, and like see if I wanted, and like I think one of the important parts is like no matter where you are in this process, it is still very, very difficult. Like the bakers that are here that have brick and mortar shops, like they struggle all the time too. Like they have all these challenges. So it might be different challenges. But it's a big kind of jump to make that. So it's nice you have like the interim steps, I think, but you're saying kind of it feels like an interim step.
Yeah, but I think it's great because it's allowed me to like increase my visibility to be more places and meet more people, and like whenever the next part happens, like that's going to be a key part of my success.
Any other questions?
Can we have a conversation in the room a little bit? I think the purpose of Common Grain Alliance is to create a collaborative space, right? A networking space, a collaborative space, and that's information sharing, it's education like we're doing now. But one of the biggest barriers, I've talked about a couple, but is cost of goods, right? Your cost of goods are high, your paper bags are high, boxes are high. You don't have a minimum order for a big box distributor, right? And one of the things that we're constantly looking for as an organization is the value that we bring to our membership. And I wonder what the thoughts are in the room about that shared distribution. I've always, for years, we've had sidebars about what we could do in micro distribution. We've talked about food lockers, but I think there's a paper supply locker, for the cottage businesses and CGA to get together and say, hey, I put in an order for paper bags. I don't need 1,000. Anyone else want to go in on paper bags and choose a drop site? I think that's something we could do. That's to mitigate cost of goods in a small business. You have to be highly organized, really make good decisions the first time about your infrastructure, as you learned the hard way, right? And have basically zero waste. Like, those are your options.
Yeah,
right?
I think the conversation.
Buy right, don't waste, and organize the fuck out of every single thing. Right, that's it. But what we're not talking about is the fact that you're paying 10 times more for bags and boxes and signs and that kind of marketing materials, a print job or whatever it is. You go to FedEx to print something off, you're paying 20 times more than a larger company is paying, right? So I think I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
And so is that something that we're dispersed geographically, which makes it hard. But if you have a bunch of organized people, I think there's already I already see good piggybacking strategies of small businesses working with larger businesses to say, hey, when you put your order in for Cisco or something, can I have an order dropped off at your location because they won't go up my long windy drive or whatever it is. I'm out of a delivery range or I can't meet a minimum. I see good piggybacking in food, but there's beyond the food costs. There's other costs of goods that you guys are talking about. I'm just curious if that's an interesting conversation.
Does that resonate with everyone?
Does that
Yeah.
resonate?
Yeah.
Is that interesting?
Can I add another thing?
Yeah.
So when I started, I thought this is sustainable. I want to create a sustainable product. And I want to buy brown paper bags that are sustainable. And if you look at the cost, brown paper bags are the cost of what you would sell the bread for.
Yes.
So
That's
to your
a-
point,
Yeah.
quickly I realized, no, I can't do that. I have to redefine my definition of sustainability.
I mean, I wonder, Barrett, if that could also be a solution for finding different types of grain, you know, for doing more of that.
That was part of my reason for joining the CJ in the first place. Was I was looking for grain sources, and I went to the meetup at Salem where I actually ended up working there because part of my aim was to sweet talk Jonathan and to order a few extra bags so I could take them off him because shipping costs are insane.
That is literally our genesis. Right?
Yeah, and I couldn't take
But
thousands of pounds.
if we want, and we've talked so long about wanting home bakers, wanting cottage industry in our network, it's not just about grain. It's about the other materials that you need to keep your costs anywhere close to what you need.
Yeah, I was thinking also as you build, you know, as I built a business model, sort of doing with my Excel spreadsheets, like understanding what's the rule of thumb in terms of utilities, like how do those factor in? Because it's easy to price out your bread, or excuse me, your grains, or you don't need that much stuff. But for pastries, maybe more. Just also providing a rule of thumb around these different types of inputs that you need to think about when you're building.
I only know brick and mortar food. You're 30-30-30. That's your rule. He's 30-30-30. I have no idea what you are.
With 30-30-30, you'd have to even tell me what you're calling about.
Yes, please explain what you mean by that.
30-30-30.
And if you're it's just a small restaurateur. Okay, so let's say no alcohol sales, just you're making pastries and sandwiches. Okay, out of a food truck or a little shop, and you got a good deal. You are putting 30% into your food cost, 30% into everything else, and trying to get to 30% profit. Mm-hmm. If you're sourcing locally, if you're buying quality ingredients, you're gonna come in the low mid-20s if you're organized.
And where's the other 10 going? 30-30-30, that's 90%.
Oh.
We go right to
that. 33, 34.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So shit.
Doesn't sound as good.
Sorry, I'm sorry about that. That is your labor, your overage. That's your mess. Sorry.
30%
That's like the flood in the kitchen, the leak in the roof.
Yeah. What any cottage businesses care to share if they're anywhere close to 30%?
I mean, the average for like brick and mortar shop is like 3 to 4% or 3 to 5%. So, I mean, sorry, I'm Ben. I'm Joey's business partner right now. But I mean, like on an average market, we were shooting for like 10 to 15% after costs, and like that's obviously after every single thing you can possibly think of. I think 30. I think if it was 30, everyone would do it, and it would just be a no-brainer. Yeah. But 30, I think, would be a lot of setup already, everything already where you need it to be, which is
cost.
As a business
cost
owner.
Profit.
Yeah. I am curious though, back to your question about the network, and Joey and I are new this year to CGA. Like, I've seen email threads of people asking questions, but in my eyes, that's not a very good platform at all to find out, what's actually going on like today, what's going on this weekend. So I am curious if there's like a Facebook group or like how are people asking these questions, because there's got to be a forum for sending out a paper bag order, running to Restaurant Depot and picking up, 60 pounds of jalapenos or whatever it is,
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So one, I hope everyone who came in grabbed a survey. Please write this down on your survey, because these are great ideas and good thoughts. Because we, through the course of the pandemic, right, CGA has grown from, I don't know, Barrett, 3 years ago, how many members were there? 40, 50?
3 years?
Yeah, maybe a little more than that.
We had an early spike.
And it kind of leveled off, but it's been growing again, right? So the issue on the network side is scale too, right? If you look at the map for DC, the actual city of DC, you see Selu and one or two other businesses, right? And then you get a cluster around Charlottesville. You get in Baltimore, where I was, there were three of us who would be on that side of it. It was Motzi, me, and another baker. And there were many other like folks who could be like Atwater is just like there's many other organizations that could be members of CGA, and for something like Barrett's talking about to work, right? Like there's no way I would have got like the trade-off of my time if I had to drive halfway between DC and Baltimore to pick something up. I'm not going to do that probably. It would need to. There's a lot that would need to go in for that to then be worth it. And to be frank, like as an organization, we just have never been able to figure out that regional challenge. And I'm not saying we couldn't as a group. So hopefully part of this is figuring that out, getting to a scale where there's enough folks who are doing this sort of work in this room.
Jennifer challenges to be more creative.
Yeah, be more creative.
She challenges to be more creative. There isn't a model for what we want to do in this sense.
For sure.
Right? You have a lot of very independent thinkers and makers in a dispersed region. But I think I think there are a lot of people who don't necessarily have to scale. And that's good, that's fine. You're gonna make beautiful things, you don't have to scale. But you need to live. And so there's still a really constructive conversation we can have and ways we can get creative about how to bring costs down for that, right?
Yeah, anyone have ideas, thoughts to add to that? Barrett, what Barrett's not saying is she's an expert in this.
No.
She's gonna figure it all out for us.
I'm genuinely curious because I think there's I think there's a key in distribution.
Well, that's kind of like what this is like. This idea of what I'm hearing a lot of is like the commercial kitchen is like a tool almost to like be able to scale up a little bit, but there's a lot of limitations in it, and I think one of those is kind of like the idea that they are like their end goal is more profit driven than it is to kind of like achieve the goals that bread bakers kind of want to achieve, and so oftentimes they will cater to businesses that are likely to be more successful, more profit driven. And I think catering, I think that's why you see all of these commercial kitchens that have a very similar type of setup of something that's towards kind of catering, which I imagine is probably more reliable than like someone who wants to start baking bread. And like this idea that I've kind of been thinking of is of like collective ownership on like a neighborhood scale of like a shared baking space. Less so something that is strictly profit driven, but more of like a cooperative, jointly owned, maintained, and kind of like cared for space to use to different degrees, where it's less so about like I'm going to rent out this space, but that we collectively purchase the flour together, we collectively purchase the ovens and the different kind of tools that we need in order to kind of come to some sort of end goal that we've decided together, hypothetically. I don't know. Do places like this even exist? Or are folks familiar with it?
So there's a new place that if anyone was at the grain fair yesterday, there were some, one of the classes was taught by a group called Third Space based in Pittsburgh. And that was 3 bakers, all cottage bakers, who, came together and said, we can't do like our own individual spaces. And now they've actually opened a bakery space and they do classes and other, like it's become a whole nother kind of value add, opportunity for them too. So there is that example. That's the only one that comes to mind for me, but I don't know if others have other examples.
Just to keep your question, I then wonder at what point could we create our own hub? Because my issue is I have this kitchen, but I can't store a lot there because there's not a lot of space. So I'm constantly flour is coming to my house. It's taken over my entire hallway and the boxes, and I order through different restaurants' Webstron accounts, and I'm picking it up here and here. So how many people, how many orders, how much volume? needs to happen to like create our own hub where we're buying so much that then the cost of shipping it out from there is still less than buying those bags off of Amazon, because that'll catch up. Like where, and I don't know, like where is that? What?
I love it. I mean, this is what we.
Can I add to that,
Go.
please? And it's
Yeah.
a very good idea, but I think who will be responsible for it? Because, you know, we are also very busy
I know.
to create that hub. And to your point, it's like someone has to be responsible for maintaining it.
I mean, that's like
you know?
a whole new job
Yeah,
in CGA.
exactly.
And
It's
then
going
like,
to be, it's a challenge, kind of.
Yeah.
Creating a new hub, it's like creating a new business by itself.
yeah.
And you're talking about around here, millions of dollars in real estate and hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment. Where's that coming from?
I think there are some issues here that are specific to the area. You know, it's very expensive here to like find an actual location. I think I looked into it for a while, and it's just the amount of money you have to invest just to make that step to that brick and mortar was pretty crazy. You know, I'm not sure how different it is in Charlottesville or Pittsburgh or anything like that, but just specific to like the DC area, it becomes very difficult due to like just the square footage expense and everything like that.
I think also like, I mean, Joey and I have been looking at Mess Hall and Union Kitchen, which are both like for the minimum level, it's like $500 a month basically to do that for us. Since we started slow, we have to be out selling at least twice a month actually, because Fresh Farm gives you great opportunity where you don't need to buy real estate and you can have $25 permit for the year, and you have the best, most foot traffic you could get anywhere in the city. So I'm curious, like creating like these forums for sharing shared resources, and maybe even going in and sharing a shared space. I do wonder though, if you lose identity for your own brand, if we go in and we're all buying the same bag. I think on one hand it could be good if it's CGA and everyone knows where the grain's coming from and they know what CGA means. But that's also, I think, a point of consideration is if everyone here is a small business owner, do they want to share parts of their business with someone else? Me personally, I don't really care if it's cheaper and customers don't mind it and we're happy with the end result. Like, it makes sense, but I think it's more nuanced. I think it does start with that network of just knowing what people are looking for and having more places to come together other than.
Starts with a conversation. It also starts with recognizing that if we're all investing in the same bag, then maybe we'll farmer diversify. So
I think
we'll
there's
get more
also
diverse products in time. That's the whole goal, right?
there's also an opportunity to piggyback to like Alex, you said this earlier, like you were trying to see if Jonathan would tack on a few bags. Like I got my grain mostly from Meat Grash Farm outside of Baltimore, but they ended up not milling for a while, and a few of us were trying to figure out what to do. Well, one of the larger folks was going to drive up to Small Valley in Pennsylvania and pick up grain, and I was like, can you just tack on 3 bags for me and bring it down, and like they could mill it for me too, because so like that sort of thing of like, if there are bigger bakeries or shops or whatever you do for your business in your community that you can probably figure out, like they are closed certain days of the week. Does that work with your business model? Would they be willing to partner with you in a different way rather than maybe going to a commercial kitchen? It's a logistical thing, right? More than anything else.
Jeff's a member of CGA, I think, because he wanted to put his wheat berries in his small house for Daniel to pick up or somebody. I mean, it's like,
you're
hey,
talking
you
about a
got
lot of people. Maybe tell that story a little more so other people besides you and I know.
Jeff Bloom, CGA's treasurer currently, so board member. I became aware of our network because Pete Sisti, another member, approached him about having a corner, a little place in the corner to put a pallet of grain for another CGA member to stop through and pick up. The breweries and distilleries, I think, are key to this. A little bit of space, cordoned off, put a few shelves in, lockbox. You receive a delivery for us. We've got some Cottage bakers who've got a locker in the back. They'll be popping in only hours that you're open. Thank you so much for receiving their deliveries for us and being a member of our network. It's great. Pastries every Tuesday. I don't know. It starts tiny, right? It starts with looking at the members that we have, by now recruited in our network that have more square footage, that have cold storage, that want to be a part of something, benefit from being a part of something, and just
You can take a freight delivery.
take freight delivery. Perfect. No, that's amazing. No, I don't know. I don't have a solution, but I know that solutions only come out of conversations. I wanted to start.
That's great.
Okay.
Any other?
Where is everybody located? Just in this area or?
No, we're pretty
all
spread out.
over?
Yeah.
We got PA, Maryland, North Carolina, DC.
Any other kind of like burning topics, things that are on folks' mind?
Why didn't either of you mention SBA?
Hmm?
Why didn't either of you mention the Small Business Administration? You business and resources?
Yeah,
No.
never encountered it.
Okay.
No, I tried to reach out some of the local, like I know in Arlington there's the business development center, yeah, and they
No, not
take
In
the 2
terms
months
of
to call you
resources.
back and they would tell you.
Can I but I had a great experience with the business administration
Oh, did you?
because there are many different, I think I came across at least 4 or 5 regional groups in the Northern Virginia area, and some of them are very good. In fact, I was paired with a mentor who had food experience, so I was going to recommend that there are folks out there who should go ahead and contact these people because they will kind of not handhold you, but at least give you some recommendation and
If
advice.
you know those people, put it out there because I never got a hold of anyone that was really. You get a call back a month or 2 later from someone said, "Oh, we heard you called, left a message," and then you say, and they're like, "Oh, we don't know anything about foods." Like there was a big drive for a while to get technology, like IT businesses, and they were really pushing that. But you say, "Oh, I'm interested in food service business."
I mean, part of it might be just like how many different, nuances and different types of food businesses and types of. I mean, they obviously seems like up their alley to be able to help with that, but like I know, I just saw a promotion from Union Kitchen that they're doing like a get your food licenses certification workshop. So I think like there clearly is like a void and easy to find, materials for that, and that's probably what Union Kitchen is responding to. Certainly what we experienced a little bit.
Yeah, there's definitely a need for more HACCP training, more, food safety training, all sorts of.
And I can share my resources links,
That would be great.
especially the ones that are more responsive.
So I have to say, I've been in nonprofit management for 30 years, and we're here because we're doing a workforce training program where we're teaching people to become bakers. But your local economic development folks are a huge resource in your local town. I mean, a lot of grant funding, a lot of loan programs, but they're the people who are supposed to have interest in your interest in their community. So, and the Commerce Department also, if you get your local Commerce Department rep, there's a lot of money out there. Especially if you hire somebody who's going through workforce training, there's going to be money to support you with that. Just thought.
That's actually my local economic development was who you had mentioned, like you don't know what you don't know. They know. It's like when you go to your health inspector, they're not going to tell you what you need to know from the comptroller, and the comptroller doesn't care about the health department and the state and the county are telling you different things, but like the local person.
Yeah, maybe I
Connects
just
the
didn't get a
dots.
hold of the right person.
Well,
I just stumbled through it.
Your challenge is not like one only faced by you. Like those offices, as well as like a lot of government offices where they have like individual offices throughout the country, are very uneven. Like there will be people who are very invested in what you were doing, and people who just want the 9 to 5 and will leave. And like, I think so. That's the other thing. It's like if you find one of those people who's not going to help you, you almost have to keep looking. Yeah, you have to keep going. What else? Yeah. Oh, sorry, Max. Yeah.
It's
You.
all good. So in my day job, I'm a city planner. I work for Arlington County government. And while I'm not in the health department, I do understand the administrative hurdles that people have to go through. It is not unique to food service. So I guess my question is like, in what ways can local governments be more helpful? I mean, we kind of were just like having like touching on this conversation, but like, beyond like who's a good person to get in contact with, but like what aspects of the administrative process could be more streamlined, or like what ways can distributing information be easier?
One thing that immediately comes to mind for me is once you submit a business application, why, if it's approved, why is it going off into the void? I mean, Joey, I've never heard of anyone reach out to us after we got it approved that, oh, here's XYZ resources, you can do ABC, and the results are 1, 2, 3. You know, there's none of that.
So it's sort of like a follow-up?
Not a follow-up at all, or, you know, if you didn't get accepted, it's like, why? Like, okay, here's what you can do to do better next time.
Communication.
But it's like they know who you are, they know where you live, they know, you know, your social security, they know everything about you, and there's no follow-up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would say as far as the cottage law stuff goes, some sort of straightforward resource that kind of could walk through someone through a hypothetical steps from a concept to sales. I like I said, I ended up finding maybe a 2-page PDF that was a decade old about cottage law in Virginia. I'm sure there's other things out there, but it was very hard to find. And then, okay, so once you find that, it's, okay, what do I have to go through as far as like business, like filing steps, you know, what I need to make sure that I have done so that I can be at market legally. Just some sort of, maybe it's overly simplistic, but some sort of checklist that gives you at least a baseline. This is who you should talk to. This is the sort of, these are the filings you need to have in order to operate legally. Here's some resources on on maybe the specific food stuff, but just like, hey, this is what you need to do to operate in this county, this state, and once you get that all checked off, you're good to go, or at least you're good to get started.
Did either of you try Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah, I mean, I reached out, like I said, I eventually kind of like stumbled through it, but my outreach to local government was mostly met with silence. It was hard to find someone who knew what I was talking about or cared enough to call me back.
I guess what I found too was, at least in Maryland for me, it was like the cottage food law documents talked about what I could and could not make. They didn't talk about how to set up the business around, like, I don't know if it was the same for you. Like, it's
and
just,
they're all very self-referential. Like,
yeah.
It's like, oh, for more information, go here. For more information, go here. And you're just back and forth between the
So maybe
same
that's a task for CGA to think about is how can we just put together like a step-by-step. I mean, it's hard because every state is different.
I want to write it. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think we could all probably do it in about, we got 15 more minutes to get started.
I listed down like the steps I took as far as like what I had to file here.
Yeah.
Just like it was like 5 things I for sure had to file, and some of them were not like you have to do before another because you needed a number from this form
to put on the other one.
to apply.
Yeah. Well, like it's funny. The word that came to mind when Max asked this question was like a checklist. Like that would be nice. And then also sort of like this is getting a little more comprehensive and maybe a little bit too much of an ask, but like who's gonna ask me for what and when? You know, it's like we showed up on our first day at the market, and in Arlington there was like a health inspector there who asked us for XYZ, and then we never, you know, that hasn't happened again. So it's like in order to like be prepared and in order to like comply with, I mean, obviously, you know, it goes without saying these rules are important. Like they save people's lives, like with very little exaggeration. And so yeah, just tell me what I need to have for you, and who's going to be asking me for it, and should I be looking for, you know, when I show up to the market, should I be tracking down the person, or are they going to come to us? You know, it's just like sometimes it's a little unclear.
I've always some of it that you found out, but you didn't find out until you got a notice that you're paying some penalty. They love collecting their taxes, but short of that, I really didn't get much in the way of, hey, can you get, this needs to be done, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I fumbled with sales and use tax for a long time. I still, like, every time I'm like, what's the website again? How do I find it?
And you have to
like,
Google a bunch of stuff. You're like,
what's my login?
They ask you some weird questions, like how many cell phones you sell in a month. I don't sell
0.
any cell phones. Odd questions like that, or like, sort of like, is this exempt or not exempt? I gotta like Google that, and it's just like.
So there's a lot of folks in the room that are already kind of running cottage food businesses, thinking about it. What are the things that you feel like you need, like to Barrett's point of like, checklists you talked about shared, drop-off points maybe. Are there other things that would make your business more efficient the way you want it to be, to that point of like, what is scale for you? Is scale what you're wanting?
I think outside of the paperwork that initially comes up, the conversations about resource acquisition and sharing is an important one, because you want to have quality resources. You want to be able to get a variety of things. But the fact of the matter is, I can't buy 15 different variety, 100 pounds each, a grain, and reasonably expect to use that in a short period of time because of my production levels. So having the ability to say, okay, but if you're collectively buying these things, I need 50 pounds of XYZ instead of I need 1,000 pounds of each, and it starts to become more reasonable, maybe from a price point. But having that sort of I would say conversational network where people can put out their needs and their abilities to kind of collaborate together to help fill in each other's gaps, because I think as a community you can do that, and there's space for all of these different businesses to operate. It's just very difficult when you're doing everything on your own to keep up. You have so much on your plate, what life throws at you. And then just to say, I'm going to add on top of this, running an entire business entirely on my own, where I'm taking everything on, is just a lot to ask. And things fall through the cracks. It's good to have that support network. I think, from my standpoint, the most important thing would be creating that network where you can have conversations about needs and how to meet them.
Can I also add? It's like one of the panel members had said, I do sour bread and I test and try, but I would like maybe help from other kindred souls who are also testing and trying to see how it went, kind of, so that we can feed off of each other. Because I'm kind of doing it by myself, especially if you're using local grains. Every year they change. So it's kind of, I think, very important to have that conversation. I think it's very kind of keep in touch and like a support group.
It's easy to miss the forest.
Oh my
of the
god,
trees.
tasting events.
That'd be so fun.
That's a good idea. I mean, that was the last CJ meet we had at Selu. Was everyone brought something, and that was fantastic. You can talk about it, and also I didn't have to make dinner that night. And you just
so
intense.
So like other grain collaboratives too, and other like have done testing for varieties, things like that. Like, okay, we're gonna try this season's set of rye from a bunch of different flours, and like we're gonna have a baker bake with all of them, and everyone show up and try it. It's not unreasonable to say like we could do that. It's it's a coordination thing.
And I'm not just talking about testing. I'm just talking about, say for example,
You really want us to try your bread.
You
think it's really good. You want to make sure.
Yeah.
We have strengths and weaknesses, I think, too.
But I was just saying, if I'm making sourdough bread and then is also using the same flour, so I could say, hey, what did you come across something like that? How can I kind of improve on this? Just kind of an exchange of like a group,
like a subreddit.
Yeah, something.
Yeah,
without giving your secrets.
Like a secret
If you're
subreddit.
if you're not already doing it too, like to the panel, to their point earlier today, like talk to your farmer or miller too, because they are having that same conversation with every other baker they supply, and they can often tell you who to call or what to do.
It's like when you grew up in class and someone raised their hand for a question, asked 10 other people had that same question. They just didn't want to ask it. I think we all have our strengths and weaknesses, things that we do better than others, and if we can help each other with the things we do well, then they can help us with the things they do well that we were maybe struggling with. I think that conversation, that collective sort of ability to pose questions, answer questions could really be helpful in this sort of community where you are so isolated. I think that's one of the biggest problems is you're by yourself in wherever baking, and you're so consumed with that you barely have time to do things like this, talk to anyone else. And I know this is valuable because of that.
Yeah, you're not alone.
CJ has that Google group. Are there in fact like categories or anything like that
So
within that?
so for folks who are members or recently members, we use this thing called Membership Works. We just switched over. It's like the thing that runs the back-end membership. There is a way to do that within Membership Works. We have not rolled it out yet because, again, time, capacity, all those things, right? But that would be the other thing is like on the CGA website, there is a membership portal area that has like a map of where everyone is, has contact information. Theoretically, you can put in information about your business too. You can offer discounts to folks. You can, like within the network, you can try and coordinate. There's pieces of that we're, slowly building out, but it's, it's a process, right?
Something that would have been and would still be helpful, I think, is like a tools and equipment list. Like we're all, I mean, not everyone's doing the same thing, but like we're using a lot of the same stuff. So like, what kind of pastry brushes do you like? And where the fuck do you get them from? You don't know when you start, and like every time I try to do something new or scale up, it's like, well, I don't know what the best way to do this is. I'm learning as I go. So having like a resource list and like even something that could be like more of a live document with like feedback and comments, like I went with this because blah blah blah, or like this is the best one at this price point, but if you're looking to spend more or less, like maybe try this. And then maybe CGA could even have like a member link with some distributors where we get like discounts on certain things, like if we buy through the link, like an affiliate.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone used Discord before?
Yeah, sure.
Like, I feel like Discord, like a Discord server for conferring lines would be helpful.
I will say, over the years, there have been attempts to use other things other than a Google group, and a lot of them have fallen flat. I'm not saying they would in this scenario, but
No, we've got a new ED. She's got a strong personality. So
she can keep it, like it's curating, like, like, and a lot of people are on farms or out in the field, like, so
it's comical.
not to,
It's comical. Just attachment to the Google group.
Yeah.
It's the thing that works.
Google group is well loved.
Group in the flip phone on the farm.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Any other, ideas, thoughts to share? Anyone have any questions for the group or for the panelists that maybe have come up for that?
We ask everyone trying to start a business, and they're having trouble with going through the local governments and what permits and what licenses. There's nobody, no company, no organization that does the hand-holding to get you through.
I had success with LegalZoom, but it was not free. I also had that. You had to pay for the licensing guide.
But someone who's had some experience with it, and no matter what county it is or what state it is, especially in today's world.
I asked other people who I found that were already doing what I was looking to do. And like I said, my friend who's an accountant, like it is, from the sounds of it, some other people had more success with local government outreach. I had very little success with getting help from Arlington County government, and even less probably from Virginia State. So I would say my best resource was asking other cottage bakers that were already established what they went through, but oftentimes they're also very busy, and if they're, being so close to the DC metropolitan area, some of the people I'm going to reach out to, they're Maryland or DC, I'm in Virginia, and even though we're 5 miles away from each other, the laws are different, so they weren't always able to provide me with the sort of level of specificity that I needed to get going. But so I'm not a good person to answer that question. Other than say, reach out to other people who are doing the same thing, and they can usually give you some good advice as to what they do.